Today we're looking at Theme 2, Rights and Responsibilities of the AQA GCSE Citizenship course. We're looking at laws in contemporary society, particularly what is the European Arrest Warrant. In this session, we're going to cover what a European Arrest Warrant actually is. We're then going to move on to look at a case study about Brett and Naghemeh King. After that, we'll be looking at another case study involving Julian Assange. Finally, we'll be finishing off with doing some exam practice of a 4-mark question. In this part of the session, we are only going to focus on the first 3 bullet points. That is, what is the European Arrest Warrant and the 2 case studies. We'll save the exam practice for the next video. The first key word you need to remember is European Arrest Warrant. That's what this session is actually about, so make sure you understand what it means in detail. This is an arrest warrant valid throughout all member states of the European Union. Once issued, it requires another member state to arrest and transfer a criminal or suspect to the issuing state so that the person can be put on trial or be imprisoned. For example, the UK could ask Spanish police to arrest and transfer a suspect who committed a crime in the UK and fled to Spain. The question remains how the European Arrest Warrant would be carried out when the UK leaves the EU. So this is also a case study that ties into Brexit and the UK's role within the EU. The second key word is extradite. This means to hand over a person accused or suspected of committing a crime to the country where the crime was committed. The next key word is foreign policy. This is the term that will be used later on in the session and you also might hear in other sessions. Foreign policy is a government strategy in dealing with other nations. For example, decisions to go to war, or decisions to intervene in international conflicts, or decisions to implement sanctions on other countries. Finally, the term deport. This is to expel someone who is not a citizen of a country from that country, typically on the grounds of illegal status or for having committed a crime. The government or court could decide to deport a person back to their country of origin for being an illegal immigrant or committing a crime. We have just completed the part of the session that explores what the European Arrest Warrant is, as well as other key words. Next, we'll be looking at the case study of Brett and Naghemeh King. In the next few case studies, you might come across names that are difficult to pronounce or difficult to spell. Please don't worry about that. You don't need to know people's names inside out and you don't need to spell them correctly in your exam paper. You just need to have a general understanding and be able to summarize case studies to support your explanation in 8-mark responses. So Brett and Naghemeh King were issued an arrest warrant by the UK on the basis of neglect of their son Aisha. They were held in prison in Spain during the summer of 2014 after they removed their seriously ill son from Southampton General Hospital, which is in the UK, against medical advice. They wanted to sell their home in Spain and pay for their son's treatment in Prague, which is the capital of the Czech Republic. They wanted to do this as the treatment was not available here in the UK. They were arrested in Spain and held in prison for 24 hours awaiting extradition to the UK. So ultimately, Brett and Naghemeh King had a seriously ill son who was being treated at Southampton General Hospital in the UK. There was a certain type of treatment that was unavailable here in the UK hospitals, but was available in Prague, and the couple had decided to sell their home in Spain to fund this treatment. However, this was against medical advice. So when they took their son from the hospital, they were issued a European arrest warrant by the UK once they had reached Spain to sell their home. We have looked at the case of Brett and Naghemeh King. We're now going to move on to look at the case of Julian Assange. So this is Julian Assange, and you need to know some background information before we move on to the actual case study. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about the background of who Julian Assange actually is before we actually move on to the case study. Wikileaks is an international non-profit organisation that publishes secret information, news leaks and classified, which means top secret government information, media, provided by anonymous sources. It had a website which started in 2006 in Iceland by Julian Assange, an Australian internet activist. Among the leaks were a video showing unarmed Iraqis being gunned down by American helicopters. the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, which revealed the true human cost of the conflicts and shone an uncomfortable spotlight on US foreign policy. Now, in order for Wikileaks to get this information and to be able to publish it, they may have illegally hacked top secret videos and emails, and this has obviously not made the USA very happy. In fact, critics of Julian Assange and Wikileaks say that what Wikileaks is doing and has done impacts on national security in the USA. What we mean by national security is the measures government takes to ensure the security and safety of a country from things like terrorism. Now, the case study itself is as follows. In 2010, Julian Assange had been accused of rape by 2 females in Sweden. Sweden had issued a European Arrest Warrant. In 2012, the Swedish prosecutors called for him to be extradited to Sweden from the UK. Mr. Assange's lawyers said that if he was sent to Sweden, he would be at the risk of then being extradited to the US. So he applied for asylum in Ecuador through the embassy in London. Ecuador granted him asylum, but as soon as he sets foot outside the building, Britain will deport him to Sweden. The rape charges were later dropped. Now, I'm filming this video on April 13th, and there has been a further update to this case. 7 years on the 11th of April 2019, Julian Assange is arrested at the Ecuadorian Assembly. The USA wants to trial him for computer-related offences, and like I said earlier, the USA's concerns of national security. Ecuador's president insists there is a deal saying that the UK can arrest him but cannot extradite him to any country that uses torture or execution, i.e. the USA. I'm sure there'll be lots more information that will be coming out on the news regarding this case study, so keep your eyes peeled for any updates. We've come to the end of this part of session 2. We've looked at the European Arrest Warrant and 2 case studies. In the next video, I'll do some exam practice with you of a 4-mark question involving the topic of the European Arrest Warrant.